we're going to talk about tonight, completing it electronically. Why? Because as you see on the slide, it'll only take you 3 to 4 days to get your results back. Sometimes that third bullet denotes that financial aid administrators, if you're not able to complete the free application for federal student aid, sometimes financial aid administrators can and will complete it on your behalf. But I can tell you this early in the game, they want to want you to go and find a place to complete it. But it is possible for them to do it. They have a tool that we've given them called Financial Aid Access, FAA Access, Financial Aid Administrators Access. So you can check with your school. I only did it at my school when we were in a crunch at the registration period and students were showing up who had not done it. Again, you're here early tonight. I do not advocate that for you, but aid administrators are different depending on where you're going. This last bullet talks about a paid FAFSA preparers. There are people out there who will actually charge you for completing the free application for federal student aid. Do not pay. You don't have to pay. There are so many resources, so many people who can assist you in doing this free. One being the financial aid office where you plan to attend. There are all kind of workshops throughout your local communities and people who will assist you in doing that. So you see here we said stop, don't pay anybody, because as the name implies, it's the free application for federal student aid. But again, there are companies who will do it. Especially if you go out to FAFSA.com. We ask that you avoid the FAFSA.com sites because those are people who are traditionally, usually who are going to charge you. You want to go to FAFSA.gov, and we'll see that in just a second. Now, when you complete the free application for federal student aid, of course, you're going to have to sign it. And here we talk about the pen. Now, we have 3 ways for you to sign, and you will actually want to sign it electronically with a pen. But you can sign it if you get all the way to the end of the process electronically and you don't have a pen or your parents are not there to apply for a pen. You actually can print the signature page and submit it. Or if you have a student aid report, you can sign it and send it back in the mail. So who needs a pen? You need a pen, students, and your parents. The pen, again, is simply your electronic signature. And we ask that you do that and guard it. You will use this pen throughout your financial aid history. So for 4 years, if you go to graduate school, even beyond when you get out and you start repaying your student loans, if you should take out student loans, this pen will be there for you, and it's your electronic signature for your documents. If you need a pen, again, you can apply for it at pen.ed.gov. When you get down to the signature page on the FAFSA form, it will ask you if you want to apply right now. And you can actually apply while you're completing the FAFSA form. And simply go ahead on and we'll push that information on out and go ahead and begin that process for you. So we talked about completing FAFSA on the web, and this slide talks about deadlines, and we actually give you this URL. You see we have that FAFSA.gov. You can also get to it in our other method. Most of you might be familiar with the FAFSA.ed.gov, but recently we've tried to streamline that process for you and put it at FAFSA.gov. We have made a lot of improvement in the online application. For instance, we have eliminated 22 questions. We encourage you to do the FAFSA on the web because it has skip logic. So questions that you answer that don't apply to you, for instance, if you say that you are a female, you won't get a question that asks, do you want to register with the Selective Service? It understands with skip logic. So based on your answers, you're going to be presented with a reduced number of questions to make it through the form. So again, we strongly encourage you, this is to do the FAFSA on the web. This is a screenshot of how it looks. And you see that before you begin the FAFSA, I took some information right from there, the documents that you'll need, and then you'll go right into filling out your FAFSA in step number 2. Now, there are deadlines for completing the free application for federal student aid. Right now, students may be completing 2 forms, the 2009-2010 FAFSA form, and the last day to do that is June 30th of this school year, okay? But if you're going to school in the fall or for any period of enrollment that starts after July 1 of 2010, you're going to be doing the 2010-11 FAFSA form. So many of you who are starting in the fall, that's the form you'll actually use to apply for financial aid. Now on this slide, we also talk to you about more deadlines to consider. Many schools, in addition to the FAFSA deadlines, schools have deadlines as well. February is traditionally Financial Aid Awareness Month. Many schools have their dates early in the school year, March 1, April 15th. You'll need to talk to your school to make certain that you're meeting their deadlines as well. When you apply after their deadlines, oftentimes you might not be eligible or you might not receive the funds for which you are eligible. Let me restate that. Sometimes if you miss the deadline, if there were campus-based funds available, some schools are awarding on a first-come, first-served basis. So although you're eligible, you won't get them. The Pell Grant, which we'll talk about, you will always receive the Pell Grant, but there are other funds, campus-based funds, that are limited at schools and you might not get that. Notice here too that we say that your state aid programs have deadlines. On the FAFSA form, there is a state aid deadline block that we ask you to pay attention to see when your state's deadline is. So you'll also want to make certain that you adhere to that as well. One other thing that I thought was very important tonight to discuss with you, and that is your dependency status. When you begin completing the free application for federal student aid, there's a series of questions that on that form that we're going to ask you to help determine your dependency status. Why don't you take your FAFSA on the Web worksheet and turn it over to section 2. This screenshot is an excerpt from section 2. When you complete the FAFSA on the Web, you're going to be presented with these questions. These questions help us determine if you are a dependent student or an independent student. Why is that important? For a dependent student, it means we need your parents' income information when you're completing the FAFSA form. If you are an independent student, we do not need your parents' information. Only your information is needed. So we have to establish whether or not you are dependent or independent. And so if you have a pen, if you'll take a moment to go ahead on and take a look at these questions in section 2. In general, you see that first one, I was born before January 1 of 1987. You have to be 24 years of age or older in order to be dependent. If you can answer as a side, if you can place a check mark in any of these boxes, if you read your instructions, you're going to be classified as an independent student. If you're 24, if you're married, if you're in the selective service, some that we have that are new and recent, that third box says, since I turned age 13, both of my parents are deceased. So if you are an orphan or ward at a court, you would be classified as an independent student. If you have been emancipated by a court order, then you could be considered an independent student. Sometimes we have foster kids. This is also new as well. If you were in foster care anytime since turning the age of 13, you could be classified as an independent student and provide all of your information. I'm just kind of skipping around, but take the time while we're here to answer these questions, again, because it is very important. Now, sometimes there are very special circumstances where you might not be able to provide your parents' information. Sometimes you're just estranged. You'd be surprised through the years how often I've heard students who are in disputes with their family. Families are responsible for paying for their child's education. So in general, parents' information must be provided. But sometimes there are very special circumstances. Perhaps there's been abuse in the family. And or there now and new is if there are circumstances where your parents are unwilling to provide your information. We now have a process where we can actually process your FAFSA form data if your parents are unwilling and they no longer provide support for you. Support can be anything. You know, if they take out a loan, parent loan, that's support. If they're paying your car insurance, paying your car note, that's support. But some students actually say, I'm estranged, my parents, I have no communication with them, they're not doing anything for me any longer. We ask that you take your very special circumstances to a financial aid administrator, and they will listen and they will hear, and they can do sometimes what is called a dependency override. So also, although you're dependent, they can make you an independent student. Or if that's not an option, if you still have special circumstances, you're estranged, your parents are just unwilling, I'm not giving my kid anything. They're out there, they're on their own, they're not providing support for you any longer. We can do, you'll get a rejected FAFSA form. That means you won't get an EFC calculated, but you would be entitled to just student loans. You won't get a Pell Grant, but you can get student loans in the event that your parents are estranged. But I would encourage all of you to keep good relations with your parents. Just, once you get out of college, you don't really need them anymore. That's one thing, but right now you really need them. And so I always told my students, you need to go reconcile. You need your parents, regardless of if you think you do not. So, okay, let's talk about steps in completing the FAFSA form. Take a look at that